In a prior life, Richard Pryor Jr. Now we're going to start with the backstory. His mother name was Patricia Watts and his father name was Richard Pryor. They met in Illinois in 1960. Now the mother was 16 and Richard Pryor was 20 at this time. Back then, a big age gap difference was not a big issue like it is now. They ended up getting married and everybody knew that Patricia had a sharp tongue. She was quick to say anything and lash out. And then you had Richard Pryor, who everybody knows that he has a bad temper and will go flying off the wall. Now, these newlyweds had moved into Grandma Marie's house, which is Richard Pryor's grandmother. So she's Richard Pryor Jr.'s great-grandmother, but he just calls her Grandma Marie. Now, Grandma Marie had a whole bunch of whorehouses in Illinois. And so one evening, the mom was preparing dinner, and Grandma Marie was like, "Why your face busted up like that? Like, who busted you in your eye?" And so Patricia, she was a little bit ashamed, and the grandmother was like, "Listen, don't lie to me. Don't tell me you went into no wall. Tell me what happened." And the mother said, "Well, we really don't have no money, and Richard Pryor, Richie is what they used to call him, he bust me upside my eye, my head, my face, because he was tired of me making potatoes." And back then you can get a sack of potatoes, and we all know that you can make a whole bunch of different types of potatoes, and he was sick of it. So Grandma Marie said, "You see that casket iron skillet hanging on that wall?" No, not the small one, the big one. "Yeah, go on and pick that up." So she says, "Pick it up and swap it down." And she said, no, do it harder. So finally, Patricia got the hang of it. And she said, "The next time that Richie puts his hand on you, you take this casket iron skillet and you knock the hell out of him." And just casually, grandmother used to smoke the Pall Mall cigarettes, and she sat down and she smoked her cigarette and she said, "Now what's for dinner for tonight?" And Patricia said, "Fried chicken and mashed potatoes." Okay, baby, so dinner come. Mr. Pryor walks in the house and he sits at the table, and sure enough, he got that plate of fried chicken and mashed potatoes, and he took that plate and swung it across the damn room. Swung it, flung it. It wasn't on that table no more. Babe, had to clear my throat for that one. He used the back of his hand and slapped the hell out of Patricia. Slapped her so hard, he done slapped her to where the damn casket iron skillet is. Baby, they say she picked up that skillet, and Richard Pryor was still sitting there looking stupid, looking dumbfounded. And he wasn't on drugs at this time. So he been looking stupid for a while. Baby, they say she took that skillet and knocked the hell out of him. Talking about when she knocked him out, baby, he was laying on the floor next to Grandma Marie's feet. Talking about Grandma Marie just swiveled her body over to the front, away from him, and ate her dinner. Okay? Baby, no games. So after that chapter, it talks about Granny. Now, Granny is the mother of Patricia, which is Richard Pryor Jr.'s mother. Now, the mother was born in St. Louis, but she ended up being raised in a town called Louisiana, Missouri. It was like an all-American town, small town where everybody knew everybody. Baby, you couldn't do nothing. It was like what social media is now, how you can't get away with nothing. So back then it was still like Jim Crow laws. And the parents end up still doing like good for themselves. The grandfather, which is Grandpa Fox, that's Patricia's father, he ended up being a janitor at a Francis hospital. It was called like Francis Hospital. And the grandmother, she was like a stay-at-home mother, and she was like one of those mothers that used to be on the phone and smoking cigarettes and just taking care of the home, making sure that it's lunch, breakfast, dinner, any of the household things done. And so Richard Pryor Jr., I'm going to start calling him Junior. He was like, listen, from the beginning, everybody knew that my mom and my dad was not a match together. And so Mr. Fox, Grandpa Fox, had ended up saying like, hey, if you ever get tired of my daughter, just bring her ass back. Don't leave my daughter out there like these men be doing and acting like she just a raggedy rat on the street. So Richard Pryor was like, cool. And that he did. He brought her ass back every time he was tired of her ass or beating her ass. And Miss Patricia would just come back. But, I mean, Richard Pryor Jr. said, what can you say? My mother was 17-year-old and she was in love. So everybody liked Grandpa Fox, right? And he was known to be like a really good guy, except for the one time that he had went to the bar and killed somebody. Now, he went to this bar that was called like Global Street Tap. It was a bar across the street from Fox and Granny's apartment. And Mr. Fox had got into it with this rivalry. They were called like the Route 66 rivalry, the Route 66 rivalry, however you say it. And they were like die-hard Chicago Cubs fans. And I guess it had to be a game going on or an argument that was heated at the bar. And so they said, baby, go on and hold your pearls, go on and hold your drink, gather yourself. They said that this man had unzipped his fly, pulled out his penis, put it in front of Grandpa Fox's face and told him, suck my dick. Baby, ooh, wee. This the kicker. They said Grandpa Fox finished his scotch, because that's what he liked to drink. Finished his scotch, got up calmly, and walked his ass across the street back to the apartment. Now, they say when he got to the apartment, he was real quiet. He tiptoed right past Junior. We remember Junior is Richard Pryor Jr. And he said, Grandpa, and Grandpa said, shh. And so, you know, as a little kid, he like 4 years old, he's like, why I gotta shush? So he follows Grandpa to the bedroom door. He sees Grandpa Fox moving over some socks and pulls out a pistol. So like a kid, he goes back and he goes to go run. Grandma. She got that cigarette in her hand, and like I said, she a housewife, so she on the phone and she talking. She say, go ahead about your little business. I'm on the phone and it's long distance. And back then, long distance, baby, don't play no games. Say what you need to say and hang up the phone. So he goes, and I guess he's sitting back down to color or whatever he was doing. A minute later, they say they heard BAM! Baby, he done went over there and he done shot and killed the man. And baby, let me tell you something. They say that man didn't do nothing more than 2 years because he was provoked. Hell yeah, you put your dick in my face and then tell me to suck it. Baby, yeah. And then they said that it also was a black man and it wasn't a white man, so he wasn't going to get enough time for that. You took out one of the people that we wanted to take out anyway. Then comes Grandpa Buck. Now, Grandpa Buck is Richard Pryor's father. Now, you have to remember that Richard Pryor's mother was a prostitute who worked in Grandma Marie's whorehouse. Now, this heifer then ran off and left Richard Pryor at the age of 10, leaving him to be raised by Grandma Marie in one of the little brothels that she had. Now, the father name was Leroy Buck Carter Pryor. And he was known to be a boxer, and he was the brothel enforcer when the tricks got out of line or, you know, the lady workers got out of line. He was whooping their ass. Now, Junior says that it was no surprise that his dad was physically and sexually abused here, and he never talked about it, but it certainly like left a mark on him because he would physically abuse his wife's and girlfriend and children. So, the story starts to back up a little bit, and it says basically when Junior was born, April 10th, 1992, in that Francis hospital that his grandparents, Fox and them, well, Grandpa Fox had worked at 2:51 a.m. He was 2 pounds and 3 ounces, which means he was a preemie baby. And so they said when he came out, the doctor was like, it's a boy, it's a girl. I mean, and the mother was like, what do I have? Do I have a freak? What's going on? So you got to know that your life was crazy just from that moment right there, right? So then Junior starts to talk about his name and how he got it. Now, his mother had a cousin named Ronnie Clay from Detroit, right? So that was his name, Ronnie Clay Pryor. And what happened was Richard Pryor and Patricia had a friend named Ronnie Clay. Now, Ronnie Clay was the person who introduced Patricia and Richard Pryor to get together. That's how they end up meeting each other, right? But at this time, Richard Pryor is like 21 years old. And like I said, he wasn't on drugs and the booze and the sugar booger and all that. But he was still very insecure and paranoid. So the next day, Richard Pryor had went up to the hospital administration office and was like, hey, change the name on my son to Richard Pryor Jr. Now, the next day, the mother went up to the hospital and she's trying to check on her baby who is premature. And they like, ma'am, ain't no baby called no Rodney here. No. And finally, after a while, talking for a while, they said, well, we do have a baby named Richard Pryor Jr. in the preemie thing. And that's how the mother had figured out that, the name was changed. But it was inevitable that Richard Pryor would regret that he had named his son after him, because he didn't want his son to have to live with the success of, filling his shoes and the success, the fame, the wealth. And, he didn't want his child to have to deal with people fake being around him because you're Richard Pryor's son, and women taking advantage of him and stuff like that. But it wasn't because, Richard Pryor was a name to be no, that's embarrassing to have or anything like that. So yeah, that was the reason why it was kind of a conflict for him to have that name. Now, 2 weeks after Richard Pryor Jr. is born, his father is broke, and the mother is broke too. But Richard Pryor Jr. is able to come home because he's now 5 pounds. And they saying Richard Pryor was so broke that the jokes that he would write, he didn't have no paper, no notebook money, no nothing. So back in the day, he would go ahead and use Grandpa Fox hangers that used to have the writing from the cleaners on it. And he would tear that paper off of the hangers and write his jokes on there. And so one day, Grandpa Fox was like, yo, I'm tired of you not having any money or no job. Come work at the hospital with me. And so on the application for the experience, Richard Pryor would put that he was a bartender because he would tell jokes to get drinks and stuff at the nightclub. So one night, Richard Pryor was at a club called Harold's Club, and Patricia, the mother, was there. And so Richard Pryor started singing and looking her direction. And she's like, yes, my man is singing to me. I'm giddy. I'm happy. Baby, why she turn around and Richard Pryor was over there singing to a white woman? They say that woman had broke so much glass and started a damn ruckus that whatever Richard Pryor was supposed to get that night for pay, baby, he had to pay them out. You hear me? So yeah, of course that happened. And so after a while, Richard Pryor was like, okay, I have to do something different. And so basically what started happening was he was like, okay, I'm gonna have to figure out a plan. He had a half sister named Barbara. He was like, Barbara, let me borrow your typewriter. This nigga then went to go buy a bus ticket to go to New York. And so he called his mom, and he was like, Junior's mom, Patricia. He said, hey, I'm gonna be gone for 3 weeks to pursue this dream that I have as a comedian. I'm gonna be back, and don't trip. Baby, this man came back home and talking about he was shocked to know that Junior was able to walk. Patricia said, yes, what do you expect after being gone for 3 years? Oh, now you know better. All right, so then we jump over to the next chapter where at 3 years old, Junior is talking about. So at this time, he is 3 years old, and this poor child has gotten drunk. He remembers that on a nice warm day in the park, his mom and some of her friends were basically, having like a happy hour at the park, gossiping, laughing, drinking, having a good time. So I guess he said he thought somebody thought it would be funny, or they thought that he was being a brat and needed him to sit down because he was moving around too much, that it would be funny to give him a shot. So they ended up giving him a shot, and they said Junior was staggering, falling, getting up, staggering, falling, getting up. And Grandpa Fox had came along, and he was mad as hell. I'm talking about he gave them hell. He got took Junior from out that park and put him in that car. Junior said he got in that car and puked all over the back seats. Imagine a 3-year-old throwing up all over the back seats because their mother and her friends just got him drunk. So by this time, it's 1964. And this is 2 years after Richard Pryor had left Patricia. So Patricia was like, baby, I'm not about to sit around like, don't nobody want me. So she ended up meeting this man named Richard Watkins. And they end up moving together. 1 year later, she ended up giving birth to Tammy in that same hospital that he was born in. And since the mother was still legally married to Pryor, Tammy's name had to end up being Pryor instead of Watkins. And baby, they said Richard was a good person until that baby came. They say when Tammy had came, he got his stuff and he went to St. Paul's, Minnesota, and he was headed for the hills. He was gone. Bye. Now, later after that, this is when the mother meets Harry. Now, Harry is the guy, Harry Price is the guy that she moves on with. And he is known to be like so decent, so kind, such a hard worker. He worked for airlines as a ground crew maintenance man, and he used to clean inside of their airplanes, and he was just a respectful, good person. Plus, the best part for Junior was that the little booze of alcohol or liquor that they would have left over, he would go ahead and take it and bring it on home. Now, Harry had prided himself on being like a good provider and making sure that it was food on the table and making sure that Mama Patricia didn't have to worry about anything and all the bills were paid. That's what men were like back in the day. You can really find men that were like hard workers. Not all of them, but if you did, that was like you with a millionaire celebrity person today. So basically, he was truly a gentleman. But he wasn't a gentleman after when he had a few drinks. And I meant every night after work. He became somebody different, and all day Saturdays and Sundays. Now, when he would tend to get drunk and all of that stuff, he tended to turn to a different person and will beat Patricia ass from the North Pole to the South. Okay? I'm talking about stanky leg and stumping all over her. And they say that Junior was too young to even know what was going on, and all he knows is that one day Patricia was like, fuck that, and got Junior and Tammy and got the fuck on and went to St. Paul. Now, if you have liked what you have heard and you would like to hear more, please go to part 2 and like and subscribe to grow this channel. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll see you again. Make sure you come back to the Blockbuster train.